Back to another session of Give Black, Give Back Conversations. I am Kia Jarmon, the co-chair for Give Black, Give Back, an initiative in collaboration with the Community Foundation of Middle Tennessee. I hope that this is not your first time joining us, but if it is, you can learn more about the funds and nonprofits that we support at blackgivingback.com. To give a very brief snapshot of Give Black, Give Back's mission, it's really threefold. We serve as a resource and amplifier of the Black-led funds at the Community Foundation. So when you're on that website, you can see the wonderful funds that are doing great work in our community. We also support the efforts of nonprofits that are run by and serve the Black community. So again, on our website, you can scroll through and see those individuals and those organizations doing work right now in our community. And we provide access and education, just like today, to the community on how to build or sustain philanthropy in order to strengthen our economy, really using philanthropy as a part of your wealth creation toolkit. So again, I hope that you will go to blackgivingback.com and learn more. Before we get into our conversation today, I have to introduce my wonderful co-conspirator leading in this work with me, Lisa Swift-Young. Lisa, I want you to introduce yourself, but I also want you to ground this conversation really in some of those statistics that we often talk about to validate the existence and power of Black people in philanthropy. So Lisa, introduce yourself and then give us some of those numbers so people can understand the real power we have.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Kia, for this. Welcome again to this platform. We hope that you get some really good information and are able to share. I'm Lisa Swift-Young. I am, as Kia mentioned, a co-conspirator in this initiative for Black Giving Back. And it's really about creating a platform for Black philanthropy to exist all year long. August is Black Philanthropy Month, and we're trying to make it Philanthropy Year. Our culture has a history of doing philanthropy. It goes back way before we even got here onto this continent. So we want to make sure that people realize that. And that history actually does kind of ground us in what the statistics show. Every year, African Americans, families give about 10% more or give about 10% of their value back to the community. And I mean that in a way, that number shows up to about $11 billion a year. And I said B with the billion. So what that equates to, if you're familiar with companies like Spanx or Under Armour, that's literally the revenue for every year for them. So we are literally creating, we have powerhouse of qualities. Also, what you might not know is that Black families actually give more than their white counterparts, statistically more. In southern states where most Black people are, as far as in the US, the numbers are even higher. So what that means is that we have all of this power that we're not using. Another really quick statistic, not to just bore you, but the reason that we're doing this and the reason this is so important to give to Black-led organizations is that whenever money is given, only about 3% of that money actually comes to the Black community. So what that means is that all of that giving that we're doing, that $11 billion, more than also giving more than our counterparts as far as our Caucasian counterparts, that money is not come back to our community. So this initiative for Black philanthropy really is extremely important to give to Black-led organizations so that we can actually take care of our own communities. So this is a really great platform. If you've ever thought about being a philanthropist, please join us at blackgivingback.com. This conversation, I'm sure, with Dr. Turner will give you some insight on ways to do it. And so we want to go ahead and get started.
Thank you so much, Lisa. If you're joining us in real time on Facebook Live, then we invite you to share this video. Make sure everyone gets the opportunity to hear from our wonderful guest today. Leave a question in the comments and we'll also look at that. Or if you just want to share some of your own thoughts, your own philanthropy story, or just comment, we want to shout you out. So make sure that you comment and share. So our guest is someone who, he may or may not know this, but he's my mentor in my head. And I think we can have those type of mentors who we met in person, but also that we follow online and that we're following in the legacy and footsteps that they established. And so Dr. Turner Nash is our guest. He's an entrepreneur, an inventor, an innovator, and recognized leader in building technology that really helps to facilitate the delivery of healthcare, educational, and entertainment content to security-sensitive industries like COVID-19. And we'll get into that in just a moment. Today, we'll talk to Dr. Nash about building a reservoir of resiliency. And I've heard his story, and I know that he has a reservoir in that way, really how he's cultivated a belief in himself, and those around him, how he's built and sustained wealth, why he and his family established the fund at the Community Foundation, and we'll share some very practical steps on how we can help the community. Dr. Nash, thank you for being with us today as our guest.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited. I was thinking about this last night as I was going to bed. It was like back in the day when it was like the night before the first day of school and you had to get everything ready. That's the level of excitement that I have to share with you all today. So thanks for having me.
Oh, I love that. We're going to use that soundbite for something. I appreciate that. Again, we met in person, but I was really first able to listen, and it's a lengthy but good interview on Marcus Whitney's podcast. I actually walked several miles, I think, listening to it. Because I just didn't want to get back in the car. I wanted to finish it, and learning everything from you working with licensing deals and in the finance industry, and then losing some, and then getting back into technology in this real specific way, working with individuals who are incarcerated. I mean, and now supporting COVID-19. It's a lot of things that you've done over your time, but give us highlight of, you know, who you are or what's most important. And I guess more importantly than that, what has been the thread of those experiences?
What a question. So I'm going to start off by saying, you know, the Lord watches over babies and fools, right? Yeah. And I've been both, and I'm the latter, right? I look back upon my life now and I realize how much risk I'd taken and how foolish I had been in some of those instances. But it wasn't until much, much later that, you know, I had a pastor that once told me, he said, you know, the Lord wanted you to be in it, but not of it, right? He wanted you to see it so that you could try to fix it, but you did not have to become a victim of it. And I'm sharing that to start out to say that, man, there's no rhyme or reason to success other than working really hard every day at trying to follow your dreams. I grew up in the projects of Cleveland. I just was joking with a friend of mine the other day about, you know, the government cheese in the brown box and how many different meals you could make with that as a child, and what that teaches you about respecting your resources. And then you never really have anything that you can afford to lose, so that, you know, your decisions have to be, you know, measure 5 times and cut once. And, you know, growing up in, I'm not going to say poverty, because you don't know that you're poor when everybody in your neighborhood is also poor. You're just there. You know, my mother and father were divorced when I was really young, so they were separated. I stayed with my mom, single mother of 4. She was at work a lot, which left a lot of time for me to try things, put it like that, right? You know, and that independence, I think, is what led me to say I can do whatever I want to do. You know, living in the projects of Puritas Avenue in Cleveland, and you have to forgive me, a guy just showed up with a leaf blower about 100 yards away. Of course he would right now. You know, and growing up and having that independence and trying new things and always being an entrepreneur, even before I knew what the word was, I just knew I needed to get money because I wanted to buy candy, or I wanted to buy some fat laces, or I wanted to buy some Chico sticks, or I wanted to buy, you know, a new horn for my bike. Like, that wasn't coming for free. So I had to go sell newspapers. I had to go to the grocery store and help people, you know, carry their groceries to their car. I had to pump gas at the gas station. Like I was one of those kids, right? And, you know, that grew into, well, I can make my own reality, right? If I just had enough of this money, I could make my own reality. Another instance I had, my life is really like some Forrest Gump type stuff, man. Like, I've had some experiences and I think back like, wow. So I was down in Texas with the comedian Tommy Davidson and a judge talking to some kids who were locked up. And one of them, we said, well, how did you get in here? He goes, man, I do kick doors. And I was like, well, what's a kick door? He's like, you know, a robbery. You just kick in somebody's door, you go in and take. And I said, well, why are you doing it? He goes, I'm trying to buy an Escalade. So as an entrepreneur, I'm like, well, how much do you average per kick door on your revenue? He's like, about $200. That's, man, a Cadillac Escalade is like $55,000. Like, you know how many kick doors you would have to do in order to get an Escalade? And he'd never thought about it. He was like, wow, yeah, that's a lot. That's a whole couple neighborhoods. I'm like, it's impossible for you to hit that goal, right? So, you know, I have another friend of mine who I talk about in my TED Talk, where his name was Aubrey George. God rest his soul. Sometimes I think the Lord puts people here just for you to learn something from him, right? Aubrey and I were in high school together. Aubrey began selling crack with his brother. And, my dad was a policeman. So I couldn't really hang around Aubrey too much. But one day I'm walking down the street, catching the bus to go to my job. And Aubrey rolls up in a new car with a new watch and really nice clothes. And I'm like, oh, man, what's going on? He's like, man, I'm selling crack. I'm going to do it forever. And I was like, Aubrey, my dad's a cop and I hear the other side of those stories. You can't sell crack forever, right? And I bring up those examples because the resiliency part is easy. You just have to get up, believe in what you're doing, and work hard every day. The wisdom piece of it, you gain from other people in your circle that you may bump into, because life is really a contact sport. You could sit in your room and dream about where you want to be, or you can leave your house and try to go get it. You can go live that dream. And I'll just close this with this. When I sat in those projects on 134th and Puritas, every Saturday morning, Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous would come on. And I would look around, and then I would look at the television and I'd be like, what's a Bentley? Oh my God, that's a mansion. People live like that? I can do that. I just have to figure out a way to get there, because they're building these houses every Saturday at 9:00, right? Somebody's got them. So just like I'm looking in this little window on the Zoom screen, I could look into a new life for 30 or 45 minutes every Saturday. And I knew I wanted that life. So it just came down to, what am I willing to do work-wise to create my own reality?
Yeah, there's so much to unpack in there. What I hear is shift in behavior, shift in mindset that shifts behavior. And so what was that? And so you've given several great examples, but what was that pivot point for you, where, in particular, because you've had moments where you've had lots at your disposal, and then you've had moments where the economy and the bank accounts look different. But what were those moments, aside from getting up and of course doing the work every single day? What was that pivot moment, or what was that aha moment for you that said, I'm never, even if I'm at my last dollar, not going to have a wealth mindset? What was that?
What a great question. I don't think anybody's ever asked me that. So two things come to mind. One, when you grow up in poverty, you're in survival mode a lot. And not all of your options to remain alive are on the legal side of things. And I had many, many friends that were on one side, and I had, probably the same number of friends who were doing it the right way. And I was more on the wrong side than I was on the right side at some point. And my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, one day she's like, what are you doing? Like, you could do so much better than this. Like, why are you doing that? And I was like, well, that's what we do, where I'm from. And she was like, man, you got to change your mindset. So it went from a questionable high risk hustle to me making more long range calculated risks. If you understand the difference there, there's a difference between the hustle and the risk. The hustle is almost like a lose-lose. The risk is I'm going to gain a lesson, or I'm, as they say, I'm going to get the bag. So I realized that the more I studied what it is that I was trying to do, which took time, the more I could hit higher percentage shots, rather than having to risk everything for a high percentage shot, but also possibly going to jail. I hope that answers your questions. You asked what were the triggers. I always knew that I wanted to be independent. I knew I didn't want to be dependent on my mother, because I saw how hard she worked. I knew I didn't want to be dependent on my father, because he would always say, don't count on me. I look back at some things that I've gone through, and, everybody does the best that they can as a parent. We're kind of going through that now in COVID, right? And I talk to my parents now about some of the things that we experienced together back in the day, and they'll say something like, I did the best I could. I understand that now as a parent, right? I didn't before. So I'll just share with you that you know, I've always had the mindset that I wanted more because nobody gave me anything. And then I just learned how to pack education on top of that, and pack planning and being strategic and building my networks. And, you know, another thing that I'll just share, and we'll probably get back to it later, is I want to be my own bank. I don't ever want to have to go somewhere and ask somebody for money so I can do something. You know, to that end, my father taught me a very important lesson one year. It was my birthday in May, and I wanted a pair of Jordans, and he bought them. And then December came around, and I was like, yo, what's up with Christmas? And he was like, no, I bought you those Jordans. And I was like, that was my birthday. He goes, no, one was for your birthday and one was for Christmas.
I like it. I like it.
That's, hey, we might have to use that later.
And I was like, I can't depend on him, right? He's not going to come through in the clutch for me. Right. So that was a really great lesson. So yeah, always having the mindset, building your networks and adding education to what it is that you do so you can be more strategic and you can calculate your risk.
Yeah, I want to highlight another point, but I know Lisa is, it has unmuted, and so I want to make sure she gets that. But when I come back, I want to talk about the value of the relationship with your wife and your family in this as well. So Lisa, go ahead and jump on in.
So, you know, first of all, thank you for sharing that story. That's a very poignant story and also a very relatable story, right? So one of the things in particular that you mentioned, and I think Kia may have alluded to it in the second part, but you went from rich, right? So you went from this whole concept of being rich and having money, you know, that sort of, you know, the kick door thing. I had not heard that before, but but trying to get rich. And so the question becomes, now that you're wealthy, and I say wealthy from the standpoint of not necessarily always financial specifically, but wealth and gaining wealth, because for me, gaining wealth is the wisdom and also the money to how to use it, right? So rich is sort of this concept of money and shoes and cars and things like that. But wealth is that matching that wisdom that you piled on with education and piled on with knowledge and learning from other people. How did you, like, what was that point for you? Why did you think you made that choice where other people didn't? Like, what was it about your upbringing that helped you switch from being rich, wanting to be rich? Obviously your wife's story sounds like it helped, but what was that turn on to be like, I want to be wealthy and actually take it to the next level? Because that obviously plays into philanthropy, you know, specifically talking about philanthropy is for wealthy people. And sometimes we don't see ourselves as wealthy, so we don't see ourselves as philanthropists. So how did that happen?
Gosh, man, I wish we had more than an hour. Two people, one random. I used to work at Progressive Insurance, and I had an 88 Camaro, and I would have to drive because I worked double shifts so that I could pay for college. And one day I was driving down 271, getting off on Wilson Mills Boulevard, and it's like 7 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday. And there's a guy already sitting there at the light in a red Ferrari. And I was like, dang, I said, I would be crazy if I didn't ask this man what he did. So I rolled my window down because it was the wind down. And I beat my horn. He looks over at me and he rolls his window down. I said, man, what do you do? He said, I'm a stockbroker. I said, okay. I went home that night, grabbed the newspaper, and went to the section where it used to be called classifieds, right? Where you could look up jobs. And I was like, man, what do stockbrokers make? And that was one that was like, I can get everything I want because he just showed me something that I didn't know before. I have mentors. That's the real answer. I began to come across mentors hanging out with older people who had accomplished things that I'd hoped to accomplish. And you have to forgive me here. There's a lot of pausing because I curse a lot and I'm catching myself. I have another mentor who I was at his house, really large house, like large. You know, sometimes you have people with houses so big, like you can't see the back walls. Like if you watch like soap operas and you never see the back wall because the scene, like it was like that. So I'm in his kitchen and he's telling me that he took a flight to Florida because he had a business meeting. Then he flew down to the Bahamas to have dinner with his children. And then he flew back to Florida that night because he had another dinner meeting. And then he came home to Nashville. Blew my mind. And he said, the one thing that I can never get back is time. I can always make more money. I have another friend slash mentor who introduced me to the power of philanthropy, because he goes, man, you got to start planning right now. If you start planning after you get money, you miss the boat. So he sat down with me, and he sat down with myself and my wife, and it was he and his wife, and he showed me how he had his estate broken out, and there was money in his estate and there was money out of his estate. And I was like, what does that mean? So he broke down how his plan for intergenerational wealth would carry itself out. And you have to see it, right? It's like the guy on the side of the road in the Ferrari. I had to see it in order to say, oh, I could go get that. I have another mentor that shared with me that poverty is traumatic. He goes, you ever wonder why really rich people go broke and they jump out of windows, but poor people may get rich and they go broke again, but they don't jump out of windows because they've been there before. And I listened to these mentors, and I kind of cobbled together a story that in order for me to really be successful, not only do I have to be wealthy, but I have to raise other people to be wealthy. I'll leave you with one other piece of advice that I got. It wasn't even advice. I was watching BET, and they were doing this interview with Rick Ross, and he was like, man, back in the day, you'd see me show up at a Waffle House in a Rolls Royce. He goes, but I got to get my whole team on, because that's the only way we all eat, and our kids eat, and our grandkids eat. He said, so that was 10 years ago. Now you might roll up to the same Waffle House, and there are 10 Rolls Royces in the parking lot. And you're like, what are they doing in that Waffle House, right? So I kind of cobble these experiences together to say, it's your mentorship that you have of people who have done what you seek to do, people who have been where you hope to go, and you ask them for advice on what they define being rich as or being wealthy as. You make it to be your own reality and how it fits your life. You asked about my wife. Man, I tell everybody she's the smartest person I know. She's way smarter than I am. I like to say that I just work hard and get lucky a lot, right? But I mean, she's really been my backbone over these last 22 years that we've been married, and even before that, to say, it's funny. When we first got together, I said, man, I can figure out anything. My brain just works that way. I feel like if you give me enough time, I can figure it out. I said, but I really need you to stand next to me and tell me what I should not do, right? Because that's the filter where I'm short, right? So, whether it's doing something that's not so right or doing something that's right, I figure it out just the same. So I'm answering that question to say it's mentorship, and it's who you surround yourself with. And if you surround yourself with the right people that are similarly situated to get to where you want to be, with enough work in that circle, you will all help one another make it to where you want to be.
Yeah, I saw Lisa, we call each other co-conspirators because, we also, I think, are spiritually connected. And so I saw her mouthing amen, because this was a spiritual answer, right? We were having, and I was having the same experience, which is why I was on mute, because, it's that kind of, I call it the hum and hymn, where where you're preaching and I'm, humming to it. And so, so I'm having a spiritual reaction to what you are saying, and there's so many places to go with it. But I've heard you say a few things. One is about changing mindset, changing behavior, and then changing surrounding of who you're with. So accumulating those people. And it sounds like, over time, because mentors, you can learn from them, keep them as colleague, and then move to the next mentor. So it sounds like that's what you also have done, because you don't just start with the mentor whose house you can't see the back of at the first day. That's what you built to. So I really appreciate those lessons.
It's interesting, man, because you probably know, you probably bump into about 1,000 people, right? And you may ask the names of 100, and you may consort with 50, and you may really spend extra time with 20, but you may only get to really know one. Be careful of how much time you spend with people that are not trying to help you, or you don't find enough value in to help. Both of those can be an equal waste of time.
Yeah, I really appreciate, and so this is where I was going to go, and I appreciate you for already kind of addressing it, which was your wife and your family and that relationship, because Lisa and her family, her husband, her adult children have created a fund. I know that you and your family have done something similar. I appreciate you highlighting your wife, because often when I have these conversations, and I've had these conversations in public and in private with lots of people, from Sam Howard, who I know that was really important to you, I would ask him, talk about your wife in this journey, to all types of folks in the city, to say, like, where does your wife sit? And they're like, in front of me or beside me, or she's the one making some of the decisions we don't think about. So we see the man. So I appreciate you elevating your wife in that. Why did you all make a decision? You talked about philanthropy, but why did you make a decision in particular to create a fund? Talk about that fund, what you wanted to do, and why it's important to you.
Yeah. So 2008, I'm standing in my driveway. I lived in Princeton Hills over in Brentwood, $1 million house. I open up my garages, Range Rovers, all that stuff is in there.
Yeah, we put the filter on. Kelly is probably like, but I love it.
And I'm standing there, and I hear a voice that says, "You didn't help anybody." And it was so clear to me that I looked around, and the voice was like, "You heard me. You didn't help anybody. All of this is going to be gone." And I was like, uh-oh. Right? Uh-oh. Yeah. I was talking to Charles Bohm one day when I'd met him at a THEC meeting, and he goes, "You go to church?" I said, "No." He goes, "You need to go to church because I see something." Like, what? That happened like 2 weeks before this message. I didn't help anybody before, and I did lose everything. I was a multimillionaire before the market crash of 08 to 10. I lost everything, and that voice later came back and was like, "Now you get to help people, and it has to be clean." I was like, man, okay, right? So I was broke, man. So look it up. I filed a bankruptcy in 2010. I was broke. And I was like, now I have the opportunity to rebuild something and do it the right way. And then I started reading and going to church and, trying to build something on solid ground instead of sand, and having the right people that were in it for the long run. And what it taught me was, I'll tell you something. When I didn't have no money and I would make $20, I put $2 in that collection plate. I was going to put that 2 in there. When I made $200, I was going to put 20 in there. Right. And I kept doing that and kept doing that. And I'm telling you guys, until I started tithing and giving back time, talent, and treasure, nothing was moving. So when you say, what are some of the practical things you can do, Kia? You don't always have money, but you have time that you can give to people. The point of inflection for me was when that voice told me I was going to lose it all because I didn't help anybody. I knew it was right. I also knew that voice wasn't me, which means that somebody's watching, right? So I tithe. I mean, I tithe. You hear me? And then I figured too, oh man, it's not just tithing. I have to give my time to people that ask for it, because I have all of this wisdom that I know that I was not meant to hold on to and bottle up and not share. I thought I was going to be retired last year, 12/31. I was like, I'm done at the age of 45. I've built up enough wealth. I've helped enough people. And that lasted 6 months. And then that voice came back and was like, all right, get off the couch, get back out there. And again, I'll say the point of inflection was me not helping anybody and it being recognized. And then me saying, if I ever did it again, or when I do it again, because I will do it again. The first time you make $1 million is really hard, but after that, you develop a system. I said, I'm going to help people, and it may be organizations. So I'll just make a small correction. We actually have 2 funds with the Community Foundation. One of them is for organizations that we support, like churches, like Gideon's Army, like Hope Village, like, a lot of people that what I call till the dirt of Nashville. They get their hands dirty with the people. And then we have a separate fund that's called the Bridge Alliance Fund, which helps small businesses. Because I believe from my studies, the average Black family is about 238 years behind the average white family as it relates to wealth. Most of that distance was created by the stock market and real estate, which, we weren't even able to buy a house until the 60s, right? And I know that in my lifetime, I've been able to overcome that 238 years through entrepreneurship. So I'm a firm believer in entrepreneurship. I believe the first time that he and I met, I was asked to come into a room over a distressed piece of property, and whatever the price was, it was. And I said, I'll buy it, write up the paperwork. And I heard a gasp in the room, like, oh crap, we didn't expect him to say that. And then everything slowed down from there. But it was a very important piece of real estate as it relates to the Black community in Nashville. And I was willing to put my money where my mouth was. So I say all that to say, it's very important to me to give back. The origin behind that was me standing in my driveway. And I look forward to creating this year my first set of millionaires. That's my business that I don't advertise. My goal is to create 5 Black millionaires every year in the city of Nashville. And that could be through the community foundation. It could be through private placement funding. It could be whatever I want it to be, because I don't have to go to a bank to get it. And I think that more of us should band together in the effort to create that stability within our own community. I just opened up an office space on Jefferson Street. Could have opened one anywhere for my new Recover Health COVID concierge company, but I did it on Jefferson because that's important to me. I need people to see that even in the pandemic, we can still open up businesses and be successful. Long answer, man. I think I gave you like intro, 20 points and a conclusion, but there's a lot. There's a lot to these questions that I just, I want to share with you, but time doesn't permit. So.
Yeah, no, this was helpful. And let me just say, Lisa and I are happy to be in the number of 5. As both entrepreneurs and small business owners, we're happy to be among the 5. And I know that people online are too, because I see people saying, thank you for your transparency. Amen. Their hands raised, people shouting out, that's powerful. So we appreciate you all joining in. Lisa, do you have a thought? I have lots of thoughts, but I want to toss to you to ask what you want to ask.
Well, it sounds like, one of the things I wanted to ask you, what were you excited about? And so you sort of kind of went right into that, like, what are you excited about? And I think the thing that's interesting that you're saying is that it's really about giving back. And so, this initiative is Black Give Back, right? So this entire process is really about that. And I think bringing up the idea specifically about like time, talent, and treasure, like what are those things that you can do in the community specifically, even, start with your family and the foundation. From that standpoint. And so one of the things that happens when we talk about philanthropy, and I wanted to ask you this question, was there's so many places to help, right? There's so many things that we could be doing. And there's things that you mentioned before that you work with Gideon's Army for, like on the ground, like immediacy. I always talk about there's 2 buckets, and sometimes people put them together, and it's urgent and important. So what's urgent is one thing, but what's important is something else, and building that foundation. So I know you get a lot of different people asking you questions. So my question to you is, how do you set priorities in your life against your business and your family life? Because once you get to that level, things start to get a little blurred. And so how do you set priorities to sort of maintain, what you're doing?
Ooh, man, it's a work in progress, but I will say, my faith is first. It's a series of umbrellas, right? My faith is first. Under that, just with me being the man of the house, I have a certain set of responsibilities as provider, protector of my wife and my children. And then under that, my wife manages everything, right? Somebody's like, where are you going to be on Friday? I'm like, I don't know. I got to check the house calendar, which is on the refrigerator. So how do I manage it? My family allows me to be me. They have lovingly labeled me as dad, and then there's work Turner, and nobody at my house likes work Turner. So I try to make sure that that I have fixed hours. I didn't learn that until last year about work-life balance. Man, I was always trying to get a bag of money. I was always trying to help people, and the bags became bigger and my eyes became bigger. And it was like, oh my gosh, how much can I make? And then I would realize that I would run so far ahead of the race that when I look back, there would be nobody there, and then I would feel lonely, right? So what good is it to have millions of dollars, but you're the only one at the at the Waffle House, right? Like I'm gonna just take it back there, and you know what's urgent to me is different now. What's urgent to me is, you know, my 17-year-old doing his college entrance essays this week. He's trying to get into Harvard. That is very important to me. I'm up with him every morning at 7:30 doing a scrum with his mom, talking about what do you have to do today. You know, what's very important to me is, you know, my daughter wants to be a singer. What's very important to me is, you know, my 15-year-old, 16, he's about to be 16, Brandon, loves sports, right? So I need to figure out a way to manage supporting my entire family to the best of my ability. And then when I'm done with that, I talk about work, right? But what that looks like is, from the moment, if I showed you my calendar now, you'd be like, wow. What that means is I set a set time for me to meet with my mentors to get what I need. I set time with my businesses to give them what they need. And then I set another schedule for me to help budding entrepreneurs and young business people that want to make it to a particular level. Perhaps I have the knowledge to help them get there, and I am required to give that time. So really, again, my mentors, my businesses, you know, me mentoring other people, but above all of that is me making sure that my family has everything that they need. And if that takes all day, then there's no work. But I had to work 25 years to get to the point where I could manage that. So believe me, I'm not taking it for granted. Back in the day, I probably neglected my family much more than I should have, trying to make sure that we could achieve a life that I thought we should have. You know, but luckily for me, again, you know, I've got a great wife that manages to accept that in me, because I was that way when we met. And, you know, my children love and respect having both parents at home. But I can tell you, man, if they skin a knee, they go to her first. and that's just because, you know, she's there for them. You know, if they have issues outside of the house, they tend to come to me first for the worldly advice, so to speak.
Yeah.
So that's how I prioritize.
I see that she just joined in. So hello, Mrs. Nash. We're so grateful. She's actually been out promoting me and Lisa in the Community Foundation, let me tell you. And I love it, because I love to see the fullness of what our community can look like, and what it can be when it's a family affair. And it really does what Lisa and I have been pushing for, which is the narrative already exists. We have a lot of language out there that says we're going to change the narrative. The narrative already exists that Black families are together and Black families give. But really what it does is continue to amplify that. And so I really appreciated seeing her, you know, push this conversation. That was really important to me to watch, because that's the modeling. And that's some of what you're talking about too. The modeling of behavior, watching people, seeing them, and then you can be what it is. Not necessarily that they are exactly, but you can see a representation of what you can be in that. So I appreciate her for that.
Let me just add one more thing about modeling. Like the way that we chose to raise our children was not to go to college and get a job. It was you need to be a business owner. If you're going to be a doctor, you need to own a clinic. If you need to be a lawyer, you need to own a practice. If you're going to be an accountant, you need to own a practice. You know, as it relates to modeling, you know, I feel that it's just that important that we teach our children that they need to be owners. They need to have agency over something in order to make an impact. And I can't emphasize that enough. I just wanted to make a footnote with that.
Yeah, no, I think that's the whole note. In your conversation has been about how you have modeled this behavior and how you've done it for so many of us in the community. That's why I opened this with saying, like, this person is someone I watch often, whether he knows or don't know, because you are modeling all the time. So I appreciate that. I want to make sure, we have several people who have just joined in kind of right in the middle of our conversation. So I want to make sure, if you're interested in what Give Black, Give Back is doing, go to the website, blackgivingback.com. There you can find, and Kelly's done a great job on, if you're following on Facebook Live, she has dropped in the funds that Dr. Nash and his family run. There are 2 of them. I'm gonna have you repeat those before we get done today, but make sure you click onto those and give. I mean, part of this, I have no qualms about asking, because I want you to make sure that we get funds in there so that we can have those organizations that are tilling the ground, as he mentioned, supported, fully funded, and not having to rely on people who keep them beholden to bad practices. And then business owners, making sure that entrepreneurs and small business owners have support so that they, in this time in particular, have what they need to be resilient and continue to flourish and not have to follow in the same footsteps Dr. Nash just mentioned about the '08 to '10 economy tank. We can protect each other and save each other in that way. So we talked about, quite a few things. Lisa, I know you might have another question. I'm going to toss it back over to you.
So I think we kind of touched on it already, but I just wanted to, we're talking about resiliency, and this is a particularly poignant time to do that. And I think, your story about, '08 to 10, specifically going back and having to reset, and that sort of brought to mind what we're doing right now. So it's the perfect opportunity to say, prior to March 1 of this year, maybe we didn't do it the right way. Maybe this is an opportunity for us to reset. And so I know that you gave a couple different things that you're doing differently since that '08 to 10. What are 2 or 3 things that people should really, like, you found out, like, hey, besides giving back, which is, what we're here to talk about, what are some other things in particular that people can use this as an opportunity to reset? This is now, it feels like an obstacle, but it actually may be a blessing in disguise to say you can start over. And this is everyone's opportunity to do that. So what is your wisdom from having been through it? And now, how do you look at this now?
Yeah, you have to start by saying you're not crazy. Like, this happened to everybody, right? My mother told me once, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I lost everything in the market, blah, 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 blah. And she goes, well, you're not the market. There's a lot of people that lost everything. So why are you internalizing this as though you did something wrong? COVID gave an opportunity. I think as soon as it hit in March or April, like I posted on LinkedIn that this is the best time in your life for you to start a new business. So with COVID, it's, a horrible example, but I think I'm a literal person, so I'm going to try to paint a picture here. When you're playing a game like Monopoly and everything's already set, one of the best things that can happen for a new player is an earthquake, right? One of the best things that can happen is that somebody can get up and go to the bathroom and it's their turn and they don't come back, and then you can slide in, right? Table minimum. There are so many new opportunities right now that you can take advantage of that it's scary. I say everybody has 3 to 4 great ideas every year. Right now, I do understand, and I'm so, connected to a lot of people that are going through really hard times right now because their businesses, are failing, or they don't have money to pay their rent. 36 million people losing their jobs. I truly understand that. I was there. But the first thing that I thought was, I'm not crazy. I need to find some way where there's an opportunity where I can use my skill set to create a product or service that somebody needs and I can get paid for it. I've got a friend or mentor. His name is Phil Pfeffer. He was the chairman of Ingram Industries. He's, I think they named a business school for him at Lipscomb. He said, man, you need to figure out how you can do something better to somebody, something they don't want to do, or something they can't do. Because those are your 3 ends. And that never left me. So to answer your question about right now and beginning anew from a position that you feel that perhaps you're not in a strength position, that's all in your mind. It's all in your mind. If I came out with a new business idea this evening, I'm going to try to operationalize it by Monday. I won't be watching TV this weekend. We watch too much TV. All that time that you're watching TV and watching the housewives and, partying and kicking it, you could be working on where it is that you want to be. There's no doubt in my mind, I am not as socially savvy as most because I've been in the basement building businesses for 25 years. And I'm telling you, it's a skill set. You have to spend the time if you want to see the change. I think right now, with everything kind of being reshifted in the healthcare market space, it's really important for us to maybe begin to get in some of these COVID-related services. Nobody did it before January, February, March, right? You're talking about a 6-month-old pandemic industry, pandemically influenced industry. So it could be negative, but you could also turn that into an opportunity to start a business. I think I just saw something for Project Return where now they offer, or someone that has gone through that program offers COVID management solutions for cleaning businesses. That didn't exist in 2019, right? I think there's another opportunity where, you know, maybe you can become a personal protective equipment distributor. That didn't exist for you 2 years ago, even though what PPE was before March. I know I didn't, right? So you have to look at these things not as challenges, but opportunities. Whenever there's a shift in the culture or the thought or the momentum, there's an opportunity for you to get involved. And I'm telling you, I've seen it many a times, and I've built many businesses off of being first to say, man, that's a horrible situation. What can I do to make it better?
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Yep.
That was great. Yeah, I think that was really great. So speaking of that, how do you encourage people to pivot? At some point, we won't hopefully be in crisis mode, because I recognize, you know, working with all types of organizations, I understand that right now we're telling folks to pivot, and that also means that you have to have done some of the work that you talked about before. So that 20-year kind of reservoir of work that you've done, you have to have already done some of that to really be prepared.
Yeah, man.
And so we're not necessarily, everybody's not necessarily in the same place of preparation, but we know that, one, because life is cyclical, we will be here again. It may not be a pandemic in this way. It may not be the 2008 to 10 economy. It may not be the 2010 flood, you know, but we'll be here. But how do we encourage people as they're kind of right in the middle of their own crisis to change mindset, to start to pivot, so they're in preparation for the next thing that happens?
I'm gonna go back to one of the basics that I use, which is you will always need at least 3 streams of income, and I call them bill money, tax money, stack money. Right? Bill, stack, tax. If you are minding those 3, you can't get caught flat-footed, right? I have a friend of mine, his name is Daryl Freeman, and I heard him talking to somebody one time guy was talking about how great his job was, and Daryl said, man, you are one management decision away from being in the unemployment line. And I was like, wow, I never thought about it like that, right? You know, I do have other mentors that I watch and listen to, but to get to your question, how do I encourage people to pivot? You should always be pivoting. There's no right time. You know how many opportunities I've wasted thinking that, oh man, I'm just going to wait until this aligns or that aligns, and then I'll leap forth to take advantage of it. It never comes, you know, and what that leads to is regret. And I will say this, I'll give you just an example, 20 seconds. I used to work at Progressive Insurance. The CEO's name was Peter something or another. I can't remember his name, and I apologize. I was like, man, this process in this particular unit isn't working. I'm going to call him and tell him. So I call him. Peter Lewis is his name. And I'm like, he's never going to call me back because I'm just a scrub. I just started. And I was like, man, when he calls me back, I'm going to put on a suit and I'm going to go meet with him. And I had these grandiose ideas. Well, guess what? He called me back and was like, come and meet with me. I want to know what the problem is. And it shook me because I didn't have a suit. I didn't have, you know what I mean? I didn't have any of that, you know, and I'm telling you just as regret. I don't think I've ever told that story publicly, but I didn't go see him because I was waiting for other stuff to happen. So I'm telling you, if the pivot presents itself, you need to be on it today. The only thing that can happen is it can't work out, but it could also work out, right? So if, like Michael Jordan used to say, man, you will miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. I tell people all the time, man, you have to try new things. If you are continuing to live every day as though you did the last 10 years, you're going to get exactly what you got. If you are comfortable and you like it, that's one thing. But if you're comfortable, but you know you can do more, that's your inner spirit telling you that you need to start doing more and giving back. And you gotta listen to that. So I encourage people to pivot all the time. Do things that you thought you couldn't do, because ultimately the things that you can't do or you don't think you can do are the ones that you have to lean on the Lord even more for. And if you're really a person of faith, you know that you're probably still going to be successful. You just have to commit to it.
Yeah, I hope people who are just joining in, because I can see that people are just joining in. I hope that when this is not live anymore, you go back and listen to the beginning, because Dr. Nash has shared some nuggets he's never shared before. So I always like exclusive. Giving us some good quotables. Some of you have been dropping those quotables. I've been writing quotables. I always keep pen and pad. And that's one thing I will say that I even see, I think him over there doing, he doesn't know I can see him, but he's got pen and paper writing notes.
I'm taking notes.
Yeah, because that is a part of the remembering process. That's a part of the reshifting process. When you write it down, it makes it real. And it also makes you realize, like, that's not what I want to continue to do, because I wrote it down. It doesn't make much sense on paper. So I can't articulate it. So let me not do it. Or let me write it down again. So I really appreciate all the nuggets.
That also works when you're writing down your goals, right? Commit to yourself. Tell other people what you're going to do and make it public. I give that one to Kenya Freeman. I once heard her say in a cockpit conversation that she mentions her goals in public because then people can hold her accountable. You know, write it down. I remember I had hit this business goal one time. And my middle child walked up and he was like, "Dad, you did it. You wrote that in your book. I remember reading it." I was like, "What were you doing reading in there?" He goes, "I just wanted to see what you work on." So then he began to see that if I write it down and bring it into existence under what the Jesuits called the first and more manifest way, I have to speak it into existence in order for me to then bring it to creation. So.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the doors of the church are now open. You can put your offering at blackgivingback.com. We'll take all of your, we'd love for you to go and find Dr. Nash's funds. He has 2 of them, which I'm going to have him talk about again in a second. You can give to any of the funds there, any of the nonprofits there, or you can give actually to Give Black, Give Back, and allow us the opportunity to spread the wealth around to those organizations and those funds. But you have shared so much. I'm actually going to create a list of, I have a little takeaway of here's how you build this model based on what you've been talking about. But I want you to talk about what's next. So, you thought last year, at the end of last year, you were going to retire. COVID hit, and being an entrepreneur, innovator, risk taker, you said, I have to jump in this because I can support and help more people. And make money doing that to support and help more people. So it's very cyclical. I imagine we'll be in this for a while because numbers are rising. But what happens next? And next could be tomorrow, and next could be a year or 5 years from now.
No, that's a great question. So the voice hit me. The voice hit me again in June in a dream, and all I got out of it was build a better system. And I woke up and had coffee, and I was like, man, I don't know what that means. And then I ended up starting Recover Health, which is a concierge COVID-19 testing and contact tracing service. And then I began to look at all of the comorbidity issues that plague Black and brown communities, and I'm going to say rural communities, and all the other populations that are not mainstream. And I was like, oh, I am supposed to create a better system for diabetes, hypertension, cholesterol, all those other pieces that grandma might face, but she can't make it to the hospital, right? So I've built out what I call a mobile paramedicine model, where just like we can do concierge services for COVID, we're also going to service those same communities for other preventative healthcare issues. And that's something that I'll be launching in the next 6 months as an add-on to what we're doing with our ambulatory services and our concierge services. Healthcare for us in our community, and I'll just be honest with you, man, I hate going to the doctor. I pay a lot of money for health insurance, and I hate going. I don't really go unless my wife is like, man, you need to go. And I'll be like, all right, I'll go. But I know for us, we don't like doctors. We've had a bad history with Black bodies being used as, research with or without our consent. So there's a long-standing history there. But what I hope to do is bring our faces to our communities to deliver the same services, that Brentwood may get or Franklin may get. And it's my goal to use the infrastructure being built by Recover Health to expand into that market. Again, there's an opportunity in March for me to have a healthcare company in Nashville where I get to start at the same starting line as every other healthcare company. And that was important to me. So there was an opportunity there. So that's what's next. I am really going to dig in and begin to build infrastructure and bring on expertise to where we can bring an equivalent, I'm going to say a real democratization of healthcare services across this city, state, and this country. That's my goal. That's what's next.
Oh, that's so good. I was talking last night to Vanderbilt medical students. They go through these foundations of health equity, and each semester I teach a session on community engagement. And and what you're talking about is actually how we build a more racially equitable system for healthcare. And we were talking a little bit about that. So you're on the forefront of that, because I mentioned that from a systemic standpoint, we really have to think about our healthcare and how insurance companies and other companies, it's profitable for there to be problems. So when you're sick, that's a good thing, because then people can make money. But what if we were all better and well? And then how, and in turn, the cyclical nature of that is, if I'm well, then I can make sure someone else is well. And then I can make sure someone else is wealthy. I mean, that
too is intergenerational wealth. Yeah, it all ties together.
Yeah,
it really does.
So I really appreciate your contribution to that industry. There's so much about this conversation, and there's so many great comments on Facebook. Lisa, any last questions, last thoughts that you have for Dr. Nash before we kind of wrap up and get out of here?
No, first of all, I just want to say thank you. This has been amazing. As Kia mentioned before, we've been to church. I went Wednesday night, last night, but we're back again today. But sometimes you need the word more often, right? And sometimes you need to get the word in a different way. And so from that standpoint, so I want to thank you so much for just sharing your story and being transparent. I encourage everyone who's watching, listening, rebroadcast, whatever, really seriously consider, helping fund these organizations and foundations specifically. I mentioned earlier that a lot of times when we give money to organizations, it does not come back to our community. And these conversations today are about things that we can do specifically. So I want to thank you for creating the foundations, giving people the opportunity to take their $10, $20, $30 to actually make a difference. And knowing now that you've, had this conversation, you guys can do that. I wish you all the best. We're here to support you in any way that we can. My family personally, as well as the community foundation, I will volunteer them as well. And to make sure that, that this initiative moves forward. One of the reasons that Kia and I wanted to be the face of this particular platform is because we needed to see us doing things together. And so this was one of the things that we wanted to make sure. And so I thank you for being out there to be one of those stories that we can highlight and share. If there's ever anything you need from us, I like to turn the tables and say, we've gotten so much from you. I feel like we should probably give you something. So please let us know. We'll do. You can't. So here's the thing, reciprocity works that way, right? So if you don't give what you receive, then it doesn't turn around. So I mean that jokingly, but actually sincerely as well, because it doesn't work that way. You always have to continually give. So thank you so much for giving, and
to the point of giving, and then I'll close. I was meeting with a friend, and he was telling me, this is the one that was making the flights for dinner, and he said, "Man, I didn't really start making money until I started giving away a lot of money." He goes, and then it just got silly, and I was like, "Golly, how much money is silly, right?" and he gives away a ton. And I've watched them and I've followed them. And again, I've modeled that behavior. So if I can share with any of you who have watched this or are watching it or will watch it, you're going to find that the more you give, the more you will receive. I'm telling you, I didn't believe it until I started doing it. And once you get into the habit and you believe in it and you're willing to sacrifice to give, I promise you it's going to come back to you. Like I can't even make it sound fancy. The more you give, the more you will receive.
Yeah, let me tell you, I have written down this in my book. I'm gonna write it a few other places. I want silly money.
Yep.
I want money that I can be that I have been able to give so much that it just gets silly. I think that's a really strong sentiment that I'm getting. There's a few things, and then I want you to tell us about your funds one more time. That I heard. So changing those mindsets, building those relationships, getting mentors, but also the relationship with Dr. Nash's partner, his spouse. But there are other partnerships that you think about. Really hearing the small voice. And I always say as an entrepreneur, I can hear God like the presence is literally sitting right beside me. And that's what you were mentioning. It's so loud, so clear. And if it's ever small, it is because I have distanced. And so getting back, so whatever your faith be, this is not to convert you in any way. This is to say that there is a source, whatever that is for you, to hear from. So hearing something, creating a plan for wealth and for what you will do with it before it comes. Because when you're in the middle of it, that's where we end up with what Lisa was talking about, those riches that let me go buy all the things because it's big eyes and you want to spend it. But if you make that plan before and you write that down and you get really specific about it, then you can start to really track yourself towards that plan and the intergenerational nature of that. Prioritize your time. You only have but so much time, and you certainly can make more money. I do believe that as well. We can always make more money. Always be pivoting, always be moving in some direction that makes sense. So not just moving, but moving in a direction that makes sense. So those are things that I heard. I also want something Dr. Nash mentioned is something that if you listen to me long enough, you'll hear me challenge churches or faith institutions to add philanthropy in some way to your lexicon, your language. When we give tithes and offerings, that is an opportunity for people to sow in philanthropically. Because that's usually what it's for, right? It's for a building fund, it's for the homelessness initiative, it's for the food drive, it's for all of those things. So as you sit in pews or at home watching physical things, I hope that you as church leaders will consider adding something that lets people know that you are a philanthropist. That's what we're really wanting to reclaim. Dr. Nash, tell us your funds again. You have two of them at the Community Foundation, and then I'll close this out in just a moment.
Yeah. So one of them is called the Nash Family Fund, which generally gives to organizations that are doing great work in our communities, and that does mean churches as well. You know, I did realize that in my tithe, I don't necessarily have to give it all to a church, right? Like I can give it to other organizations, and it's still me giving anonymously to organizations that need it. And then the second fund is called the Bridge Resource Alliance, where we will partner between my family, the community foundation, and maybe a neighborhood bank like Studio, where we can help entrepreneurs who might hit a certain threshold but need an extra bump to offer, I'm going to call it unconventional opportunity to still have their businesses be funded for specific purposes. So those are the two funds, the Nash Family Fund and the Bridge Resource Alliance Fund.
And I know that Kelly has put those in on the link in the comments, but you can also find them directly from blackgivingback.com. You can scroll to the area where it talks about our funds that we have, that Community Foundation has. It's a large accumulation of them that are Black-led and Black-supported and go toward the Black community. So make sure that you're doing that. Any last thoughts, Lisa or Dr. Nash, before we get out of here? Just want to make sure.
Thank you for your time. I think that what you're doing is awesome. I hope that you continue to do it for a long time, because there are a lot of people in this city, in this town, that are doing really great things that generally stay off the radar. So before we went live, Kia was like, "Thanks for doing it." And I was like, "Man, I don't want to, but it's my obligation, but it's also something that I don't advertise." So, I think there are a lot of great people who just want to keep their heads down and keep doing great work. And I would ask you to continue being vigilant in finding those people and allowing them to articulate their story and to share with the community at large what they're doing. So again, thank you so much for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Yes, it's been our pleasure. Lisa, any last thoughts?
No, if you're one of those people who has a story that you would want to share, and this story has invigorated you, and you have modeled Dr. Nash specifically, start modeling him and reach out to us through the blackgivingback.com, and we will reach out to you. And we just want to make sure we share stories. One of the things in particular, there's 3 things that this organization is about. You know, the Black Giving Back initiative is we want to build more, we want to support the philanthropists who are already out there doing it. So that's why we're doing this today. We want to make sure that they have the education to be sustainable. We also want to help nonprofits specifically stay, and we want to help organizations in the Black community. So if any of those things are you're interested in, or you have any interest at all, please reach out to us at blackgivingback.com. We'd love to hear your story and share your story.
Thank you so much for joining our latest Give Black, Give Back conversation. We encourage you to search the Community Foundation's Facebook page, and you will find our previous conversations with some amazing guests that we've had. We also invite you to stay tuned. For December, we do this every other month on the Community Foundation's page, and we appreciate them and all the staff and leadership there who has been particularly helpful to us. Audra Cox, our wonderful liaison who works with us, Kelly Wahlberg, who is the one who's dropping things in the comments as we speak right now. And so we really have to appreciate them. And again, everyone else at the Community Foundation. I think I also saw Amy Fair in the comments as well. So we appreciate everybody. Again, to learn more about Give Black, Give Back, go to blackgivingback.com. And until we see each other again, give Black. Bye, everybody.